Hello retro gamers and welcome to another video where I repair and restore something. Today I have a selection of LCD handhelds which have various things wrong with them, and since they are so simple, I thought it would be a better idea to do them all in one video as opposed to 3 separate shorter videos. First up we have the Swifter by VTech. This is a very simple Tetris-like clone. There isn't actually anything wrong with it on a technical level, but the case is very yellow. So what I want to do with this is retrobrite it, since my experience of retrobriting beforehand has been very limited and for the most part unsuccessful. The only other damage cosmetically is the battery bay, but as I said, you can see here that it does work quite well, although the buttons are a bit sticky. Which tends to happen with these, so I can just clean the circuit boards with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, and that should remedy that. A big RGO thank you goes to viewer Adam, who donated this to the cause. You may remember previously, but Adam also donated a red Game Boy Pocket, which I repaired in a previous video. Next up, we have computer games. Yeah, that's literally all it's called. There's really no other identifying features on this device. All I do know is that it was originally my dad's, and I remember him playing it quite a bit in the early 2000s. Again, it is just another Tetris clone, but opening it up, the immediate problem are the batteries, which have leaked quite a bit. As you can see, this battery says it should have been installed by January 2002, which I'm sure it was, but that definitely dates this handheld. I started with this one because it could potentially be the easiest to fix, and I was definitely right. Taking out the batteries is pretty easy, just want to make sure you don't touch any of the gross innards of those old expired batteries, and putting in new fresh batteries, and yes, as I predicted, this thing works like a charm still. Luckily, the batteries had leaked in a way that they didn't even get over any contacts, they basically just leaked all over themselves, so there's not really much else for me to do for this. It works, it's clean. So even though this video was going to be more of a 3-parter, I guess now it's a bit more of a 2-parter, since this handheld is effectively fixed, even though I didn't do anything except for changing the batteries. So back to the Swifter, and disassembly starts out quite easy. There is only 6 screws around the perimeter. Opening up, there is even more screws and lots of hot glue, which is never a good sign. Hot glue equals cheap. However, there are so many screws here, and the fact that most of the components are really just held in by the form factor of the casing, it really makes me wonder why they put in all that hot glue, but it was a pain in the ass nonetheless. So several screws later and I was able to start pulling out the pads for the buttons as well as the buttons themselves. And look at this little button, look how discolored it is. This is supposed to be purple, so this really is the extent of it, and since it is just a little throwaway handheld that Adam didn't seem too worried about, I definitely can't wait to retrobrite this and see what I can make work. So after desoldering the negative and positive power leads for the battery compartment and removing the rest of the screws, I was finally able to take out this absolute mess of a circuit board, which was essentially in 3 different components. I also removed the battery contacts from the back bit of the case, since this will be submerged in water for hours at a time, while others easily pulled out with pliers. I had to be a little bit more desoldering as well as a lot more brute force. I submerged all the battery contacts in a little container of white vinegar since they were quite corroded, even though they all still worked, and then I got to work cleaning the case in some warm soapy water. Why I didn't do this in the sink as per usual, I don't know. I'm not really sure what was going through my head at the time, but it turns out to be quite messy to do it right there on the desk. Still effective, but a lot more cramped and definitely a lot more wet. I got water everywhere. If you haven't seen it on other YouTube channels, the process of retrobriting is really quite simple. All you need is a bottle of peroxide developer, which is a hair care product. You need water, you need the sun, and then you need some sort of container. I'm using a clear container here so the UV rays from the sun hits it from all sides. One problem I made last time was I just used a black container, hoping that it would heat up faster, but it didn't really make any difference anyway since I was doing it in winter. Anyway, I just put the most yellowed pieces in the container, fill it up with water, simply from the hose, pour in the developer, and then I just put some Glad wrap over the top to A, keep crap from falling into the water since I'll be living here for quite a few hours, as well as hoping for some sort of heating effect since it will be all enclosed. Next up, fresh out of the mailbox, we have another little LCD game called Dorayaki House from the Doraemon anime, I believe. And I don't really know anything about anime, so please feel free to slay me in the comments if I'm incorrect. But this has a copyright of 1983 on it. So while being yellowed, it is in decent cosmetic condition, but does not power on at all. It runs on 2 little cell batteries, and as far as I'm aware, it's supposed to just turn on immediately as soon as the batteries go in, and even poking what I believe is the reset button here, since I need to use a screwdriver to do it, there is no life at all. Again, disassembly is very simple. There is just 4 screws holding the 2 faces of the case together, and then just another several screws holding the single circuit board inside to the casing. So this is much simpler than the Swifter. Inspecting the board, I'll let Pass Me deduce what he thinks the problem is.
These capacitors aren't looking so good. There's cracks in this one.
However,
as luck would have it, I happened to buy some of these today. 104M. That is someone saying good luck.
the fact that the batteries rely on the 2 cases being together to be held in place, it means it was quite difficult to test the board to see if power was going to the right places. So I'll let Pass Me tell you how we got around this problem.
Form factor makes it hard to test because it needs to be all together for the 3 volts. 2 1.5 volt batteries to be together. AA batteries are also 1.5 volts each, equaling 3 volts. So doing that, I get some feedback from the speaker, which may or may not be picking up on the mic.
So with that problem solved, it was straight on to replacing those capacitors. It's very simple to do this. Even though the circuit board was only single-sided, the components sort of fit in there as if it was a through-hole double-sided circuit board. So it was very simple to desolder the old solder using some braid, and then snip off the legs and put in some new ones. Really as simple as that. I did exactly the same for the other capacitor, and voila, we have brand new caps on the board. I still wasn't getting any life out of the thing, or at least so I thought, and that's because I was a complete idiot. I wasted all this time checking voltages and continuity on the board, when I realized I didn't even have the LCD polarizer on the top. Forgetting the fundamental part of how an LCD actually works, putting the polarizer on top revealed that it was actually working, and I could see the little figure jumping around. Success! So with that all confirmed and working, it was time to desolder my bodged 3 volt solution and put the batteries back in and put the thing back together how it's supposed to be. With the handheld now operating, it was time to clean it, since even though it was in good cosmetic condition, it was yellowed and it was quite dirty. Now, I just did this as per normal. It wasn't completely filthy, so I didn't use water. I was just using alcohol, and this went fine for the back half, but oh no. An absolute catastrophic turn of events.
Shit. Ah, no.
The alcohol started to wipe away at the black text. And you think I would have stopped just when I noticed the top logo was blurring away, but I sort of panicked, I didn't really think about it, and I ended up blurring most of the text on the handheld. Which is a real shame, considering I had just repaired the damn thing. So I'm going to chalk this up to mostly a success, since I only paid $10 for it on eBay after all, and while I'm not completely sure how much they're worth, I did find some Yahoo auction listings in Japan where they were selling for about $150 Australian, although that was with the box.
That was a really bad idea.
It is a failure though that I managed to muck it up afterwards, however, so maybe in a future video we'll see about replacing all that text. But for now, back to the Swifter. I did start a little bit too late in the day with this first round of retro brighting. It was probably only in full sun for about 4 or 5 hours, where you'd probably ideally want the entire day. And while it wasn't completely de-yellowed, you could see that there was definitely an effect happening. Bits that were only a little bit yellow had pretty much turned back to the original color, and bits that were extremely yellow were definitely more faded. So, not being discouraged, I did do this 2 more times. One of those times was a bit of a waste since I ran out of developer, but I did another full session with another full bottle of developer, and I think it came out really well. There is still a slight bit of yellowing around the bottom bit of the case, but otherwise, if I was just to show you this by itself and you'd never seen it before, you might not realize that bottom half was completely yellowed. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's not completely back to its original color, but I'll take it. Especially the round button bits. One of those was extremely yellow, and now it fits in with the color tones of the rest of the handheld quite well. So really, I do consider the Swifter to be a bit more of a success, even though I didn't really do much electronics in actually fixing it. The fact that I feel like I might have this whole retro brighting thing down pat gives me lots of confidence. While I am happy that I did get the Doraemon or whatever it is to work, I am very sad about all the text and all that. That is definitely quite a shame. But with that, that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will believe I'll get this out before the start of 2020, so if I don't see you, which I probably won't since I'm on the internet, have a fantastic New Year's, and I hope you had a great Christmas as well.